Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, it's going to be kind of a short one, but what we're going to cover is several ways that I know of how to identify a Mercury crank. Now, back in the day, especially in the mid 50s, the real hot setup trick was using a late Mercury crank. Mercury cranks post 1939 would have given you a 4-inch stroke. If you went with a later Mercury crank, what you got was the full floating bearings, which also gave you a little slicker setup, a little better for the high RPMs. So, you know, that was the trick. They're kind of all getting used up and broken over the years. There's only so many Mercuries, and everybody's been after the cranks for a long time. Our engine, the 59AB for the 30 Roadster, we don't know what crank's in it. I don't know what crank's in it. I haven't taken it apart and looked yet. The crank looks sort of fresh when I look down the cylinder walls, but I haven't seen it. So let's take a look at it, and I'll give you guys some tips and tricks. And feel free to drop in the comments if you know any tricks or tips that I missed. And we'll see if we got a Merc crank. And if we don't in this one, I've got a handful of other engines we can yank apart and see if one of those has a Merc crank, because I got a pile of Flatheads out of the Springfield Auto Recyclers as they closed. And I don't know, one of them might have come out of a Mercury. There's a cracked 8BA out there, so we can take a look and see. Anyway, let's get into it. Ways to ID Merc cranks. Number one, if you're in Canada, is the easiest. Canadian Mercury cranks had a dimple in the front of the front weight. So if you're in Canada, just take a look at your front weight and see if there's a dimple there. That will show you if it's a Mercury crank or not. If you're not in Canada, the next best way for checking your Mercury crank to see if it is a Merc crank is the oil plugs. A 3/8 oil plug is a standard Ford oil plug for the drainage clean out. A 5/8 is a Mercury. So that's the next best way, and that's for the sludge buildup passages. The drain plugs are in the counterweight. Third way to check to see if you have a Mercury crank is for post 1950 Mercury cranks only, and that's the 1 cm marking. That'll start in 1951 and go through, I believe, 1953. That 1 cm marking will indicate that it is also a Mercury crank. The fourth way to tell if you have a Mercury crank, you measure the width of the large counterweights on the flats at the 90 degrees. If it's under 6 inches, it's a Ford crankshaft. If it's over 6 inches, it's a Mercury crankshaft. The fifth way to tell if you have a Mercury crank is measure the stroke. This is really easy to do. You can do it a whole bunch of different ways. Easiest probably in the block is to just measure the distance from bottom to top of the piston throw. So when the piston hits the bottom in the cylinder wall, measure where it's at, and then crank the motor around till it's up at the top of its throw and measure that. And that difference will be either 4 inches, indicating that it's a Mercury crank, or it won't be. It'll be 3 3/4, I believe, indicating that it's a Ford crank.
Ba 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 ba.
There's our crank, and it is maybe a little less fresh than I thought it was. A little rust on there. Let's see if we can get this thing spinning over. That's pretty interesting. Hunk of damage there. Old too. Ran with that. Well, from everything I am seeing, this appears to be a standard Ford crank, not a Merc crank, which is just fine. I'm not too worried about it, but the Merc crank would allow me to be stroked, and that, of course, would be need different rods and everything. I do have the pistons for this engine. Might be kind of hard to see, but on the top here, they've been run just a little bit, and on the top of this one it says 60 over. Let's see if I can get that cleaned up. A little bit of progress, you can see. Kind of faint, but right there it's 060. They're 060 pistons. Original Ford, 8BA rods. I'm not sure who the pistons were made by. Probably indicated by that marking there. But that's what we're going to run on this thing. And yeah. Still kind of trying to track down a camshaft for it and everything. This crank might be runnable as is. I might take a look at my other flatheads and see if I have a Merc crank in one of my other ones. This journal's got a little, just enough you can catch with your fingernail. We'll see. We'll see. Not exactly sure I'm sold on running this crank. Also got to check the condition of the bearings. Really have not done much with this engine besides giving it a once over and seeing that it did not look to be cracked. No terminal cracks that I could see. I'm gonna stick this piston up in it though and give you guys a demonstration on one of the other ways to measure the stroke. Okay, magically got a piston in there. Now let's flip her on back over. Just like that. Okay. Now we want to get that piston to the bottom of the stroke. Right there. So now what we'll do, we'll get a straight edge ruler. Now what we'll do is we will measure the height from the same place of the edge there. And I can see right now that it is going to be 3/4 inch stroke, because you can see where the pistons came to, but we'll run it anyway. So right now it's sitting at almost 4 inches from the top of the deck here. And then we come back up. Well, it's still 3 3/4. So if you look real close, we're sitting right at 3 3/4 right there. And 3 3/4 is a stock Ford crank stroke. Now, if that was all the way up here, the 4 was down here. This is the 4 mark. If it was down here, that 1/4 inch, we'd have a stroked engine, or a Mercury engine. It could just be a Mercury engine as well. Anyway, I am going to go ahead and get the pistons all cleaned up, get all that crap off of them. I'm going to pick out a cam. I've been talking with a buddy, member of the local car club, the Hooligans, about which cam. We've been kind of bouncing numbers back and forth off each other. It's going to be a streetable cam. I'm not going to do anything too crazy. This thing's, I mean, it would be really cool if it went to the salt, but that's not really where I envision it. It's going to be a streetable hot rod. That's what we're building it for. It'll be 60 over, which will give it a little more juice. We'll have a 2x2 intake on it. We'll do some kind of finned heads. Kind of see what the swap meets provide. But yeah. So anyway, that's how you check to see if you have a Merc crank. And they're getting to be pretty rare, turning into hen's teeth. So definitely, if you see one, grab it, and especially if it's an inexpensive price, because they're getting up there. I got a couple other flatheads I'm going to pull apart, rob parts off of. Some of the valves and springs from the 8BA we were robbing the valves out of were not good. Most of them were, but some of them weren't. But fortunately, I have a cracked 8BA in my hoard that has the full set of valves in it. So we'll yank all that stuff out, take a good look at it, see what we have in the goodies. I believe I've got another 59A that I can strip down and see what we've got for parts in that. Maybe one of those has a Merc crank. I mean, that 8BA could be a Mercury engine. I don't think YouTube's been pushing my videos too hard, but if you pay attention to all the data they give us, which I do, with vastly less views, I've had significantly higher rate of likes, comments, and subscribes. So I really do appreciate that, guys. Just keep after it, and channel will grow, whether YouTube wants it to or not. I don't know what I did that offended the YouTube gods, but we'll just stay after it. I'll keep making content. I hope it's interesting to you guys. If anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. I think we're going to run some hones on this and just put some crosshatch back on it. I can see some crosshatch. I've tried to figure out the history on this engine. So it had 60 over pistons. It looks to hardly have any hours on it. Like I don't know why it got taken apart. Unless it was just a 60 over engine that got bought by a guy and he was getting ready to build it and just ran out of time. Because that's my understanding, is the fella had a stroke and he's just not building hot rods anymore. So his motors went to a buddy of mine, and I was the friend of his that was into flatheads and hot rods. So we made a deal on stuff. But yeah, kind of interesting trying to figure it all out. You know, you kind of wonder when you see engines like this if they've got some kind of a major problem, or you know, what the deal is, why they're all taken apart. So you look for catastrophic cracks, and you look for scoring in the cylinders, or what could have been the reason. But in all honesty, the reason could have just been that he got the engine, was getting ready to build it for a car, and started taking it apart. Because this is right where I'd be at if I got this engine. It was 60 over. I probably would have thrown some paint on it too to seal it up from the elements, pulled the pistons out, and started planning my cam just like I'm doing, and intake and heads and the whole deal. So I don't know. Maybe that's the simple answer. I'm trying to keep videos coming out regular for you guys every Thursday evening. It might be kind of late, like I'm sure this one will be. I'll probably be editing till the wee hours of the morning, but trying to keep it regular for you guys. So I hope you guys appreciate that and are enjoying what you're seeing. And I'm sure as September draws to a close, whether I'm eating tag soup or elk, you'll see videos start getting a little longer and a little more in depth. But anyway, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you don't mind, and we'll see you on the next one.